Hello class. In this video, we're going to be covering problem solving by comparing volumes. But before we start, I want you to put in your notebook our full complete heading, including your first name and last name, mathematics, your date, your period number, and the title, Problem Solving by Comparing Volumes. Let's put that in our notebooks now. Now that we have that in there, we need to go over a couple of different formulas. So the first formula that we're going to go over is the one that we commonly use, which is length times width times height. Or you could view it as V equals L times W times H. L stands for length, W stands for width, H stands for height, V stands for volume. I know that you're comfortable with that because we use that most of the time. However, there is a second formula that in this case would be very useful for us to do. And that is the base of the area times height, or capital B times little h. The reason why the B is capitalized is because base area stands for the area of the base of the shape. So basically, this base area right here is equal to the length times the width in this formula. So in a sense, it's just kind of shortening it up. Okay, so we have that in there. I want you to pause this video and make sure that you have these two formulas in your notebooks. Let's do that now. Now that we have this in our notebooks, let's actually look at a problem. Okay, so here's our problem. And it says, Amita wants to make a mold for a candle. She wants the shape of the candle to be a rectangular prism with a volume of exactly 28 cubic centimeters. She wants the sides to be in whole centimeters. How many different molds can she make? So in this question, we actually need to build a chart, right? Because we do know that it has to have exactly 28 cubic centimeters, right? And they must be whole numbers. And then we need to know different molds. So remember when we've done this before where we've done cross-outs on the tables because we want to make sure that we're not just rotating the figure, because if a pen's standing one way, I move it to the sideways, it's still going to be the same pen, right? So we need to eliminate that. But before we could do that, we need to actually build a chart so that we have every single possible way written first. So I'm going to build a chart. I'm going to pause the video to save some time, and I'm going to build the chart in front. Now I built my tables here, and I labeled the top ones, if you notice, with a capital B for my area of my base. I did the H for my height and the V for my volume because I want to make sure that they equal 28. So each one of them needs to equal 28. But if you also noticed that in here, I had put in my table's heading that I used the centimeters squared, the centimeters, and the centimeters cubed. By putting that in my heading, I was able to eliminate having to write my unit down for every single line, okay? I did that so that I can end up saving space, all right? And I don't know if I need all these lines, but I just made them. If I need to extend out, I will extend out. Okay. And then I always want to make sure that it equals 28. If it doesn't equal 28, then when I multiply these two, then there's nothing that I can't use it because it needs to equal 28 because it says here exactly 28. So if I look here, and let's go over some of the bases. I always like to start off with 1. You can start with any number, but I like to build, so I always start off with 1. So my base here, starting off at 1, could be 1 times 1, which will give me 1. So 1 times what number will give me 28? And that would be 28. So my height must be 28 in this one. But my base could also be 1 times 2. Right? Because the next number after 1 is 2. 1 times 2 gives me 2. 2 times what number gives me 28? And I know that that is 14. Then I go 1 times 3. Well, 1 times 3 is 3. Is 3 times any number give me 28? The answer is no, so I'm not writing that down. Then I have 1 times 4. Well, 1 times 4 gives me 4, and I know that 4 times 7 gives me 28, so I know I could use that one. So if you notice, all I'm doing is I'm going in order until I can't go anymore. So I'm going to keep this 1, and then I keep increasing this one by 1 to see if I can take a number and multiply it by another number to equal 28. If I can, I write it down. If I can't, then I skip it. Right? So 1 times 5 gives me 5. 5 times the number doesn't give me 28, so I can't use that. Then I have 1 times 6. Well, 1 times 6 gives me 6. And 6 times a number does not give me 28 that are whole numbers. Remember, I can't have decimals. They must be whole numbers. So after 6 comes 7. So I know that 1 times 7 gives me 7. And 7 times 4 gives me 28. Now I go to 8. 1 times 8 is 8. 8 times a number does not give me 28. And I keep following that pattern, right? Because 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 times any of those numbers will not give me 28. So I'm going to skip that. The next one would be 14. So I have 1 times 14. 1 times 14 is 14, and I know 14 times 2 gives me 28. I also look at 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, all the way through 27, and none of them multiplied by a whole number is going to give me 28. So I know my only other option would be 1 times 28. And 1 times 28 times 1 gives me the 28. So all I did was I kept the 1, and then I started here at 1, and I kept working my way up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 28. And I only wrote the ones down that would work. So now I'm done with those part being 1, but now I can move on to 2, okay? So I have 2, and I know 2 times 1 will give me 2. I start back here at 1, right? And 2 times 14 is going to give me 28. So now I'm going to keep on with this 2 here. So I'm going to keep a 2, and I'm going to increase this one by 1. Well, if I make this a 2, I know 2 times 2 is going to give me 4. And I know 4 times 7 gives me 28, so I can use that. So I'm going to write the 2, and then I'm going to write the 7. Then I start off with 3. Well, 2 times 3 is 6. 6 times the number does not give me 28. I do the same thing for 4, 5, and 6, and realize none of them work. The next one would be 2 times 7, because 2 times 7 is 14, and I know that 14 times 2 gives me 28. So I'm just continuing on with the order. So the next number is 8, and I realize if I make this 7 and 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, or 13, and I multiply it by 2, I'm not going to be given a number that I can multiply by a third number to equal 28. That's a whole number. So I'm going to skip those. And then I have the 2 times 14. Well, 2 times 14 is, in fact, 28. So 28 times 1 gives me 28. So I'm just going in order. Now I have 3. And I realize 3 times any 2 other numbers is never going to give me 28. And I know that because 28 divided by 3 is not going to give me a whole number. So I'm going to skip the 3. I'm not going to make this to a 3 because I know 28 divided by 3 is going to give me a decimal answer. So then I do it by 4. Well, 28 divided by 4 is possible with the whole number, so I know that the 4 works. So I start with the 4 times, and again I start back at 1. 4 times 1 is 4, and 4 times 7 gives me 28. So I'm just going to keep that up. And if I change this one to a 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, any of those numbers times 4 is not going to give me another number that I can multiply to get 28. But I know that 4 times 7. Well, 4 times 7 is in fact 28. And so 28 times 1 will give me 28. I also notice here that there is no other number that I can multiply by 4. And I could test it out. If in doubt, test it out. What about 4 times 6? Well, 4 times 6 is 24. 24 times any number, any whole number. Can that equal 28? No. So I know that I could skip that. I'm just going to finish it off, but I would do the same process. So if changing this 4 to a 5 or a 6, it's not going to work. The next one would be the 7. So 7 times 1 is 7. 7 times 4 is 28. If I make this 1 a 2, that'll work too, because 7 times 2 is 14, and 14 times 2 is 28. What about 3? Well, 7 times 3 is 21. 21 times a number is not going to give me 28. But I do have 7 times 4. 7 times 4 is 28, and then 28 times 1. Now, for the purpose of time-wise, I'm going to finish it up, but the process would be exactly the same. I realize the next one would be 14 times 1 times 2 will give me 28. Then I have 14 times 2 times 1 will give me 28. And then I have 28. So let me undo that. I have 28 times 1 times 1. So I write that there. 1. Now, in our notebooks, what I want you to do right now is I want you to pause this video and I want you to copy all of this information down in your book. Because we're not done yet, okay? So we need to look at which ones are doubles. So let's pause this video and write this in your notebooks now. Now that we have this, we need to notify with the doubles. So obviously, for these first 6 right here, they're not doubles because none of these are doubles, right? So we need to look. Is 2 times 1 times 14 a double? Well, yes, it is right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a star next to it. That's my indication that that's a double. Then what about 2 times 2? Well, 2 times 2 is not a double here. What about 2 times 7 or 2 times 14? Since the only 2 that's here, right here, is 2 times 1, I know these 2 are not doubles. Now I go over here, and I go to 2 times 14. Well, again, 2 times 14 is not anything previous, so that's not a double. Then I look here, 4 times 1. Well, 4 times 1 is the same thing as here, so that's a double, so I'm going to put an asterisk there. And then what about 4 times 7? Well, 4 times 7 is not listed here, or anything previously, so it's not a double. Then I have 7 times 1. 7 times 1 is a double because it's listed right here. So 7 times 1, I'm going to cross off. And then 7 times 2 is the same thing as 2 times 7 here. So I'm going to indicate that's a double right there. And 7 times 4 is the same thing right here, 4 times 7. So I'm going to mark a star there. Then 14 times 1 is the same thing as 1 times 14. So that's a double. 14 times 2 is the same thing as this one, 2 times 14. And then the 28 times 1 is the same thing over here as the 1 times 28. So I've indicated which ones are my doubles. And now I'm just going to count. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I actually have 10 molds that are different. So I'm going to pause this video to write my sentence. So my sentence here is there are 10 different molds. Okay. So I want you to pause the video and I want you to write the additional edits in your notebooks. Now that we have that in our notebook, I want you to try one on your own. And the question is, Raymond wants to make a box that has a volume of 360 cubic inches. He wants the height to be 10 inches and the other 2 dimensions to be whole numbers of inches. How many different size boxes can he make? So it's the same setup. You need to draw a chart like we did here and go one by one. Start with 1 and move your way up. You may view this video as many times as you need to and write down any questions that you may have. But I want you to still try it to be able to get credit. All right?